All right. Well, this was the next progression and the final tune-up before you get after it. So it was good. This is exactly why I wanted to play a team like Wofford. I was in the SoCon for 5 years, and those teams they compete, and they get after the ball. They're aggressive around the basket. They're not afraid to be physical, and so we got a good dose of that early on in the game. And then these games you play them for a reason, to go over situations. Players and officials both have to do that. But all the situations that presented themselves in this game, the late game situations, foul or no foul situation, pressure free throw situations that took place, getting the ball in bounds against pressure late game, a lot of different things that we were able to do, and even digging a terrible hole early and then finding it within yourself to not jump on the panic button. And that panic button is going to sit right next to you, and it's huge, and you're going to want to call for mercy and hit that panic button. And we didn't hit the panic button. So I thought that was really good. Played a lot of guys. We were able to bring some fresh blood in there and really helped change our fortunes, and so that was nice to see.
You talked about having some of those late game situations. How beneficial can it be to have a game like this early on in the season to kind of see what you need to work on and work out some of those kinks?
Yeah, it's great. Just the late game situations, it's impossible to get a real simulation the way that this was, right? I mean, I can put 22 seconds up on the clock, and I can put Meechie Johnson up to the free throw line, and I say, Meechie, if you miss this free throw, the whole team's got to run down and backs for 22 seconds. And he wants to make that free throw, but if I could check his heart rate and his pulse, I bet it was significantly higher when he had to go in there and make that one-on-one at the end of the game. So you can try to simulate them, but you just can't the same way. So I think those situations are invaluable. It's invaluable. You get it on tape. A lot of learning and teaching that'll go on based on how this game went and how it played out. Not necessarily just the result, but just how it played out. Even down to, Jacoby fouls that guy at the end, and they call it a shooting foul, which I don't know. I have to check that one out again. But they called that, and so you can't be in that situation. We talked to him about that. So I think it's so many good things to be able to take from an exhibition game like this, and then of course for the fans, you have to win. You have to win. We're still going to be 0-0 whether we win or lose this game in our next one, but for your fans, you do want to win. You want to win. You want to have an entertaining product and show some fight. We got down big. 17-34, I think, was a halftime deficit. So they doubled us up. And so to come back in the second half and get stops, hold them to 23, score 40-something ourselves in the second half, there was a lot. That was, again, another situation that you can't simulate.
You mentioned you had the opportunity to play a bunch of guys tonight. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on how you made the decision for the starting five that you had and then the second five that you put in about halfway through that first half. What came into making that decision, and why did you pick those five for this particular combo versus the second half? Yeah,
the starting five was just really the starting five, and then the next set of substitutions to begin the game really is based on what guys have done over the last days, weeks, and months. And, those guys that started the game have been our most consistent performers, and so that's why they started the game. And then we made our substitutions, and then at some point, it's kind of like, all right, well, who's doing what today? Who's playing well? And then who's playing well with whom? And then who's playing well in a way that really helps us today, So while Benjamin Bosman's Verdonk, you may not have thought was playing well because he had no field goal attempts, he also had two big offensive rebounds, a couple assists, generated some wide open shots for us. And while he was in the game, his plus-minus was higher than anybody's on the entire team. So the value of that stuff. And so then once you get it set if you notice, there weren't near as many substitutions as we're coming down the stretch. It's that group has gotten us there. If there's something that they do, or there's a foul situation, or a sheer fatigue scenario, then I'll make substitutions. But as long as guys are fresh, they're in the flow, they're feeling really good about themselves. The other guys that are not in the game are confident in them and cheering them on. I ride those guys, because the other thing that's very difficult is then to put a guy back in there with a minute and a half and say, okay, we need you to make a shot now. That's really hard to do for that guy, And guys think they're going to perform in that moment, but it's a difficult thing to do. So that's what we did. We rode with the guys that really had kind of it going together.
First, what do you attribute the slow start to? And then secondly, it seemed like second half defense kind of got things going. What gave you all what prompted that on that side of the ball?
Yeah, I think it was a combination early on in the game. Like I said before, we started off, I think their first 2 baskets were offensive rebounds. So you're setting the tone on what the game is going to look like right away. And so then we had a couple of defensive lapses. They made 1 or 2 shots because they felt good. And so that's how it happened. But to generalize what was going on was that they were scoring. We weren't defending. And one of the bigger factors, I think, was they were aggressive. They were aggressive to the ball. They were physical. If 2 guys ended up having the hands on the ball, I felt like they ended up with the ball. And then maybe our guys took them lightly to that end. Just didn't take them lightly. That's a bad way to put it. They underestimated how physical and tough that those guys are. The teams in that league, I'm telling you, I faced them every day. They're physical, competitive, tough-minded kids. And I think they were significantly ahead of us to that end early on in the game.
Coach, in the first half, only 1 of 12 three-point shooting, but the second half, you hit a lot more than 1, but the looks were a lot better, and it seemed like the ball was moving a lot better too. What did you see from your end about how the offense flowed in the second half kind of compared to the first?
Yeah, a little more patience. I think there were a lot more inside-out threes, which is usually there are 2 scenarios that are typically the highest percentage threes based on the scenario. One is a post feed that comes out, and another is an offensive rebound that gets kicked out. Those are statistically generally your two highest percentage threes that you're going to make, and we had more situations that involved those things versus there were some quick triggers in the first half. Sometimes guys want to try to get themselves going, and okay, 1 guy does that. Well, then when 3 guys do that, well, there's 3 threes that are probably just not great threes to shoot. We weren't in a rhythm. They were switching a lot of stuff, and then we didn't take advantage of the size advantages that we had on the inside, which allowed them to stay home a little bit more on the perimeter. And they forced some turnovers in the first half. But I just think the quality of shot was better because they were inside-out threes a lot of times. Ben generated some of those, but we ran a couple plays. I will say that also. We ran more sets in the second half. We did, which I typically don't like to do. Is you recruit guys that know how to play, and then you run more basketball and less sets, but we ran more sets in the second half, and some of those generate. Even the 1-3 Zach got right in front of the bench. He came off, peeled off of a fade screen that was off of a play we have called pistol. So I think that was another thing that helped generate some good threes for us.
How beneficial is it to have multiple guys that can pick up the slack late game when Michi Johnson's struggling?
I think it's hard to quantify how much that can help you. Either that or those guys have to play really good basketball every single day, and that's just not going to happen for any player, but certainly for guys of this age. There's going to be some inconsistencies and just some nights where you just don't have it. And so to be able to have some other guys that could find a way to help the team, that there's nothing. It just keeps a fresh life out there. Honestly, you sub a couple guys in there, their energy, they've been chomping at the bit. They got drool hanging out of their mouths waiting to get in the game, and they come in and they play like gangbusters. And so it's just a new life and a new energy, and it gives another guy that's maybe been struggling a little more time to let things settle down over on the bench and cheer his teammates on. Those are the kind of guys I want. You might be struggling. A guy goes in, you pass the baton off to him. He's playing well, and you got the towel waving for that guy. So it's invaluable to have multiple guys that can get in there and see what it looks like for them today.
Got two for you, Lamont. When you talk about gangbusters, who are some of those guys that you would, consider to be those guys off the bench that come in and make the big plays for you guys?
Yeah, just from an energy standpoint, I think Ben's always comes in and has good energy. Josh is a good energy guy at times. He can impact the game as far as he's a massive guy and he can impose his will as a rebounder. But Ben was with just sheer energy, hustle. Jacoby comes off the bench and he can change your fortunes in a lot of ways. Today wasn't his day shooting. He was 1 for 7, I think, from the field. But also he had the third highest plus minus on the entire team. So he was doing a really good job defensively and just the spirit that he brings when he comes into the game. I think it's really important. He doesn't care if he shoots at all or who does. He just has a great spirit. And then and Zach can be one of those guys too. We got a lot of guys, honestly. I don't want to list the whole team off, but today Zach was the guy from an offensive standpoint. But he did some other good things. He was much more solid defensively. I'd say that's probably the biggest area of growth for him, was that he's gotten just more solid on the defensive end. But he made some shots today too.
And I know you talked about not hitting the panic button going into the half, but when you're in the locker room at halftime, what do you kind of say to those guys just to keep them calm? Or was everyone just kind of calm already?
Yeah, we have some older guys, so they're trying to figure things out themselves, right? And then you hear a lot of things being said as you're walking past their locker room to the coach's locker room. And so, but one of the things particularly, I went in and they acknowledged themselves, which was good, that there was an energy deficit and that there was, they were a little bit lackadaisical. So I did bust. Normally I don't ever do that. I let them do their thing. I busted in and I said, now how could that happen? This is the first time we're playing in front of other people. How could that happen? Now there's a lot of things that could happen. You can miss shots, but how could that happen? And so then I let them, discuss amongst themselves again, and went and just came back in and told them some things we had to do defensively. We just had to get better. I had to lock down and get into a groove defensively, and then let things go offensively. Stop worrying about what you're doing offensively. Someone's going to shoot. We're going to get a lot of shots up. So, if the ball finds you and you're open, be ready to shoot.
Being out-rebounded and outscored by 11 in the paint, is that worrisome at all, or is that just the way it's going to be for this team?
I don't know. It's a good question. It's our first time going against, I don't ever want to be out-rebounded, but, I've been out-rebounded and won before. I've won the rebounding battle and lost before. Typically, it's a good indicator. You want to be able to rebound, especially in this league with the athletes that we have in our conference. And so we'll build towards that, being able to do that better. But, that's one. And then the points in the paint is another thing that we got to continue to get better at. Right now, this was one that we had a slightly different game plan with these guys, because they're really, really good, if you watch them, at drawing guys, getting in the paint, and then kicking out. And this was from my days at Chattanooga. We typically tried to make them finish on one-on-one situations around the basket. I just thought it was a better deal than because they'll come out and make 23s on you if you start over helping. So, we'll see. Certainly, I don't like those numbers necessarily, but there's surely room for growth.
Yeah, I've got two also. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
How much better has Zach Davis's shot gotten from last year?
Yeah, a lot better. He's worked on his shot a lot. Okay, and I don't want to sit here and give the perception that he's going to be Klay Thompson this year. But he's worked on his shot a lot. There's no doubt about it. And so the way I would characterize it now is certainly improved. There's no doubts in my mind about that. I'd say significantly. But he's also still streaky at times. But it's good that you can be streaky bad and then also streaky good, versus long streaks of not so great and then, a splash here of something good. And so he's continuing to work on his shot. He spends a lot of time on it. I will say that. He spends a lot of time in the gym working on his shot.
I know with Colin, the time frame is indefinite. Do you have a sense of how far he is in the recovery process from mono, and how much does that impact what y'all want to do as a team?
Yeah, we'll see. I know he went and got some more labs done, and they were looking at some things. Not to put too much out there, but he's making progress. He lost a little weight while it knocks you out for a young guy. I've never had it, but I've been around a lot of players that have, and it knocks you out as a young guy. And it changes everything for us. To be quite honest with you, he's one of our most physical guys. He's certainly, I think, our best athlete. He's young, but he's a competitive guy. He's not afraid of physicality. So you look at a game like this and some of the things that were troublesome to us, rebounding situations, not being able to take advantage of physical advantages around the rim. And so, I mean, it definitely hurts us. He's a talented player. He's had an incredible growth over the summer and in the off season, and he had positioned himself well to play a lot of minutes. And so it'll be a path coming back, and we can't wait for him to get back. But in the meantime, it'll be an opportunity for some other guys to grow and develop their games as well. All right, thanks for being here, guys.